American Psycho, American Psycho, American Psycho, American.
My name is Daniel Graves. I'm the singer, songwriter, producer, manager, pretty much everything for the industrial pop band Aesthetic Perfection. I am originally from Los Angeles, currently based in Austria, and that pretty much sums up all the interesting things about me, at least as far as my opinion goes.
I'm sure it's more than that. What about your influences for your look? I've got to ask that. I mean, from my point of view, I've seen you on stage in Malta, and it's a very Freddy Krueger look, and it's a very scary look compared to the real Daniel Graves.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, I'm so heavily influenced by so many different personas, and I try to take all the little tidbits about these different people and run them through the lens of, you know, Daniel Graves or whatever Daniel Graves is in my imagination. Because Daniel Graves is really sort of like an exaggerated version of myself. And so obviously I don't look like that all the time, but it's kind of the stage and the making music videos is sort of the opportunity I have to let those little bits out. As far as like who they really are based off of, I think you can trace back the majority of the Daniel Graves persona to Michael Jackson, Freddie Mercury, and Marilyn Manson. And I think Marilyn Manson was a really defining character for me because I loved how he intentionally made himself ugly. And that's kind of what I always feel like I'm doing, because I never wanted to be kind of like some beautiful pop star, rock and roll type guy. Like I never really viewed myself as a sex symbol or wanting to be a sex symbol. So it's like that element of it, of making yourself ugly, is really important to me.
It works very well, though. It's an effective look, isn't it? It really is an effective look. It really is. What about when you were younger? Did you envisage that Aesthetic Perfection was going to become what it is?
I think we all, and by we all I mean, you know, sort of like people who are stupid enough to become professional musicians or want to become professional musicians, right? We all have these kind of dreams of being a megastar. Obviously, as time goes on, reality begins to set in, and it's very unlikely that any individual is going to become, you know, the next Michael Jackson, next David Bowie, whoever. So I think as time has gone on for me, like I've become much more sort of realistic in not only my goals, but also, you know, the things that I'm satisfied with, right? Like it's not really about world domination anymore. It's about being able to be a professional musician forever. You know, having a long-term career really, I think, is more important to me now than it was when I was a kid. Because I think when you're a kid, you almost like glorify this flash in the pan rock star. You know, it's like live fast, die young, that type of thing. And now that I'm not so young anymore, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't sound so appealing.
Yeah, I can understand that. What about your influences when you were younger? As in, what were you listening to? I mean, obviously, by the sounds of it, certain groups have already come through.
You know, it's interesting because the scene that I'm in doesn't really, you know, you don't. Let's say this. I grew up listening to top 40 radio because that's what like my mom listened to like 24/7, and that was just such, I think, a defining, uh, like, element of forming my tastes and my sort of expectations from music in general. And then, you don't really expect that to be the musical genesis of a guy who's, in this scene. But to me, it totally makes sense because when I look back on all of the sort of bands that influenced me that were from, this scene or this kind of world, I only liked, the poppiest, most flamboyant, most, pop of all of these artists. And I remember like being a teenager and loving Nine Inch Nails and like Manson and stuff. And people were like, oh, you totally love like Ministry. And, then I bought a Ministry record and it was just like thrash metal. And it was like, these 8-minute long, like just, it was not anything like, it was not pop music at all. And I could not connect with it. And it was just always sort of like these bands that were essentially pop music, but with goth packaging that really caught my interest. So obviously, like in the interim, I've learned to appreciate Ministry, but it's just kind of looking back, I see that everything that I love is essentially pop music.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the way you said earlier about your trying to make yourself, as in like Marilyn Manson, uglier or ugly, is that where the name came from?
Yeah, like because I grew up not ever sort of fitting in with people's preconceived notions of beauty and all that kind of stuff. Like I was never the cool kid in school. I was never like the hot guy or, it's like, it's just, that wasn't my life. And I always kind of was, even before I decided to make myself an outsider, I always felt like I was an outsider. And, growing up in a place like LA where, there's so much emphasis on being attractive, being perfect, all this kind of stuff. And, I just grew up watching people sort of do whatever they could, surgeries, whatever was humanly possible to make themselves more attractive or stay attractive or like try to hold on to their youth, that type of thing. It's like, for me, it was like you're polishing the silverware on the Titanic, right? Like it's all going down no matter what. And so aesthetic perfection really is for me is that reminder that nothing is ever perfect and just like everything is ephemeral, everything will end.
That's very true. And just to point it out, I did not mean make yourself uglier. Wasn't insinuating. Just want to make that clear. Wrong choice of words. I mean, it's well known that you've left the mainstream record companies. What has that been like, leaving them behind? And
I think it's important to remember that none of the labels that I were ever on were like mainstream record labels.
No.
I was not like on Warner or Sony or, and like there's the big three, right? Like, and I was not on any of them or any sort of like subdivision of them. And I think before the digital revolution, those types of record labels, indie labels, made sense, right? Like they held the keys to the kingdom in terms of distribution and marketing, and they had the money and all that kind of stuff. So you had to like enter into these relationships with people, even though you had sort of conflicting goals, right? It's like it's the label's job to extract as much money from the artist as possible, and it's the artist's job to extract as much money from the label as possible. So you've always got this sort of tenuous relationship, but I think that it was sort of held together by the fact that you needed one another. Like if without an artist, the label had no product to sell, and without the label, the artist had no way of reaching the world. But now we've got the digital revolution where it's like the bar for entry has gotten so much lower because of the abilities that digital distribution offers us, all this kind of stuff. You can essentially be your own record label and keep 100% of the money that you earn. And I think that that is really, really important for independent artists to understand. And when when I'm going out there, sort of like railing against record labels, it's really just to encourage artists to be self-aware enough to only enter these types of agreements knowing full well what the dance is. And if I were to be invited to the table, to talk to Universal, Warner, Sony, I would have that conversation, absolutely, because they can get you to a world that really no digital distribution can. They'll get you on the radio. They've got the sort of connections that are still necessary if you want to be Billie Eilish or Dua Lipa or whatever. So I'm very, very glad that I took the steps that I did and that I went independent, because it gave me a lot more freedom. It gave me the ability to release on my own schedule, on my own time, keep my own money, all that kind of stuff. It was a good decision, I think.
Yeah, definitely. What drives your passion, Daniel, for what you do? I mean, I've seen you put out so many videos of various things like tone deaf and things like that. You're always busy, really busy.
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of it is that I do not have the capability to relax. Like, I don't know if it's ADD or if I'm on the spectrum or something like that. A lot of these sort of ideas have been floated, because I literally cannot go to sleep unless I've worked myself to absolute exhaustion. I can't like go and sit on a beach and just like chill and read a book. It's just there's just this there's this thing inside of me just pushing me at all times. So I think that is really what it is, and I wish I had a better, more detailed answer for that, but it's just this inherent need to constantly move, and I like physically move. If you can see, I've got a rocking chair here. When I'm working on music, I'm rocking back and forth. I have a rocking chair for when I'm watching TV. I go like this. I'm incredibly hyperactive, and I can't stop unless I have the complete brink of death by exhaustion.
Well, it's one way to explain it. If you do relax, do you listen to other bands?
Oh, I'm listening to music constantly, like 24/7. Music, all time, all day, every day. Yeah.
What do you listen to, Daniel?
I really, really like all of the new sort of like, it's called like dark synth, like all the sort of industrial based music, dark synth, Sierra, Morris Black, Moon Exis, like this sort of like very French sounding industrial. I love all of that. I love REO Speedwagon. I've been listening to a lot of REO Speedwagon. Got into Ozzy out of nowhere. Like I didn't grow up liking Ozzy, but just in the last like 6 months, I'm just like, all I want to do is listen to Ozzy, especially like the, weird ballads like Dreamer. So, I love music. I just want to be around it at all times, and I feel like there's a genre for every mood and every time and place, and that's why, like, I do go from listening to like hard industrial dance music to REO Speedwagon and Ozzy, and then modern metal like Architects and Arch Enemy and all that kind of stuff.
Do you still get nervous?
Always, constantly.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's there are a lot of different types of artists, right? Like, and I understand that there are some people who just like don't get nervous at all. Like these people that are just like, I need the stage, I crave it, blah 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 blah. I'm the person that craves making music, right? Like being creative is what is most important to me, and so I feel like everything that I do everything else that I do that is not making music is in service of that goal, right? So it's like I put myself out there, I make music videos, I do interviews like this, not because I feel particularly comfortable with it. Like I'm actually not a very like outgoing kind of like I don't know. I'm actually quite reserved. I'm a bit shy. All of those kinds of things. So I do these things so that I am able to continue to make music, and going on stage is very, 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 very difficult for me, and it doesn't get better. It absolutely does not. Like I almost feel like I'm facing death every time I go on stage because the fear is just so like visceral. Like it's crazy.
Wow, I would have never ever noticed that in you at all.
It's horrible. It's so bad. I got the worst stage fright ever.
Wow. Right. The next question is actually from my wife, who is not into this kind of music at all. But she did ask, "What is the butterfly tattoo? Is it a symbol of anything?"
I'm one of those people that my tattoos have zero meaning. Like, you've got those people that are just like, I got this, and I got this butterfly landing on a tombstone, and it's got my grandmother's name on it and her birthday. I'm not like that. I'm like, I'm the guy that walks into the tattoo shop. And I'm like, that's cool. Let's do it. And the reason that I did the butterfly tattoo is because I hadn't seen a lot of like men with butterflies. Like it felt like a very sort of almost like a rebellious thing to do, in the sense like guys always want to get like sort of like hardcore things, and I just thought it would be really interesting to get something quite like beautiful and delicate on my throat. It felt like sort of a ridiculous thing to do. So it's like, I like beautiful things. I figured might as well just put a really big beautiful thing right on my throat.
Yep, why not? Like others, the last 18 months, obviously nearly 2 years, has been different for everybody. Has that allowed you to become more creative?
I feel bad saying this because I know how difficult it has been for so many people, but for me, it forced me to take a break. I'd just been on tour for like years, and it finally like forced me to sit down and face a lot of personal things, explore a lot of musical ideas that I'd never had the chance to do. So I really tried to use this time to the best of my ability, and I feel like I've actually gained a lot from it, and so I'm quite thankful to have had these 18 months, and of course it's not all like rainbows and sunshine. Of course, there's a lot of very difficult aspects of it, but I think overall it's been a very positive thing for me, and I do feel a bit guilty saying that, because I look out in the world and I see how negatively a lot of people have been affected. So I hope that what I'm saying here doesn't diminish that, because I certainly recognize it, and I'm certainly sympathetic.
Of course. What's the longest you've been on tour for then, Daniel?
I mean, for a couple of years there, I was like home 3 months out of the year, something like that, which when this was not during the last album cycle, but I want to say like, in the sort of Till Death, I'll Be Destroyed era, like I was on tour all the time, and it was, it's even when you're in your 20s that begins to wear you down, right? And
yeah.
So I'm not 25 anymore, and just being on tour, I think in 2019, 2020, I was on tour or on the move for probably a good 3/4 of it. Like, again, it's like 9 months.
It's a long old time. You looking forward to getting back to touring?
Well,
Well, goes back to the other bit then.
just because I'm terrified of playing live doesn't mean that I don't get anything out of it.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, before I go on stage, there's just this. I've got that fight or flight response. Like I want to just like turn tail and run. But you know, once you're there, once you're like in the moment, that sort of disappears, and I get this sort of like laser focus. It's kind of it's almost like a meditative experience for me. So I do enjoy that. I think I also really miss like being on the road with, you know, other sort of like crazy musicians and, you know, playing music and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Gas station dinners and, you know, that
Yeah.
I miss that kind of stuff. I think it's not a black and white situation. There's always pluses and minuses, and pros and cons. But I think 18 months is a pretty long time to have as a break, and so I'm starting to feel the itch again.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've done this 12 songs in 12 months, or you're doing this, and I've got to say, wow, what an incredible collection of songs you're putting out. I mean, New Drug, Gravity, American Psycho, just amazing. That's just 3 of them.
Thank you.
How have you managed to write so many fantastic songs in that time period? I mean,
yeah, I think if anything, this project has really taught me how to get out of my own way. You know, I like many artists, I think I spent so much time agonizing over my music in order to like make every note perfect. It's like everything just has to be the absolute best. Like you think that everything that you create has to be your Bohemian Rhapsody, right? It's like it's got to be your magnum opus. And I fell into that trap like so many others, and sometimes I would spend 6 months, over a year on a song, and I started seeing hints of this probably in about 2015 when I did Never Enough for the re-release of Blood Spills Not Far From the Wound. I had to do that song in 2 weeks. So I just ran with it, and Never Enough ended up becoming one of my most popular songs up until that point. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I wrote that song in 2 weeks. It's interesting that it, like, clicked so well. I didn't even have time to, like, spit shine it, whatever. And then, you know, fast forward to 2016, I make LAX. I think I spent, like, 6 months on LAX. Tanks. Goes nowhere. And then I spent 6 weeks or something on Love Like Lies. And then that became one of my bigger songs ever. And I was like, is this just a fluke? Like, what the hell? And then it really clicked for me when I was on tour in 2017, and I was writing a song for another band, and I wrote this song, and I gave it to them, and they were like, you know what, we're not gonna use it. I was like, all right, well, I think it's kind of cool, so I'm just gonna finish it real quick. So I wrote the majority of the song in this backstage, 45 minutes, and then I went home. 2 weeks later, I came out with Rhythm Control. Rhythm Control is like another really, really big song for me. And I was like, oh my God, have I just been getting in my own way all this time? Like, should I just write, you know, from my gut and not from my head? And then that's what I did with Into the Black. Like I sort of was this 50-50, like in my head, in my gut type thing. And then this project really is just like, just write with your gut, write with your heart. Don't overthink it. And it's just been this transformative experience for me. So I'm like super glad that I did it, because from now on, this is just the way that I'm just gonna produce like this. I'm just gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna write the song, couple of weeks, you know, and then, you know, done and dusted, on to the next one. And if the world likes it, great. If they don't like it, who cares? There's more to come. As long as you're always doing your best and always trying to push yourself forward instead of like resting on your laurels and being like, I can do that. Like, I think as long as you've got this sort of your eye on the future and constantly pushing the envelope, that's the best way forward. So I think this project has just been so telling, and it's just such a teaching moment for me as a creator.
Oh, some brilliant tracks there, I must say. Are you going to be adding videos to them?
If there's anything else that I've learned in the last couple of years, is that you do not release music videos for songs that have already come out. So if you saw, like, I made a music video for Supernatural, it just absolutely tanked because the song had already been out for a while. It's just not the way the world works.
No.
So you gotta like debut a song with a music video, or else not do it. But I've made a music video for the track that's coming out in October, Bark at the Moon. So that will be like a full-blown music video, and I think next year I'll start, like, I'm gonna keep releasing music, but it won't be as let's say like clockwork like this. But I'm hoping to bring out, you know, a few singles every year and a music video with every single one of them.
Yeah. When it comes to the fans, how can fans best support an artist like you? How should they listen to your music?
Well, if you're talking about the method of consumption, it doesn't really matter, because I don't think music has any value in 2021. It just doesn't. It has, like, it's not how artists make money. Like the value of something is usually determined by, like, scarcity, and scarcity helps sort of drive what people are willing to pay for it. Nobody's willing to pay for music right now, right? Because there's no scarcity. Like, you can just get any song you want at any moment, at any time. You pull it up on YouTube, you pull it up on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever it is that you use. It's all there at your fingertips at any moment ever. So, and because there's no physical media attached to it, there's no production costs. So really, music is a completely worthless thing, which kind of, you know, I think it's counterintuitive for, you know, even myself. Like, when I say that, I feel that like ick factor, because, like, for me, music is the most important thing. But if you sort of view music as the advertisement for the stuff that people are willing to pay for in 2021, concert tickets, merchandise, you know, having good music leads to people wanting to pay you for remixes or production, or, you know, there's a whole other world out there. There's a whole other way for artists to survive in the current climate, that is driven by their music, but it isn't directly their music that is, you know, their music directly that is earning them that money. So I think streaming's great. Streaming has really helped bring music to a lot of people that otherwise couldn't afford it, because it's so cheap. You know, now it's like $14 a month. It's like one CD a month, and you just get, like, the world's library of music. I think it's great. So yeah, stream my music. I get a few bucks from it every month. That's great. If you really care about music and you know, the bands that you love, go to their website, buy a T-shirt, sign up for their Patreon. I've got a Patreon, patreon.com/Daniel Graves. Like, those are the people that are really, like, driving this, making this whole thing possible. So it's like, music is great, and it's the most important thing, but it's not how you make money as an artist, and it's not how you support artists as a fan.
Brilliant. It's a good thing to know. Anything else you'd like to add, Daniel?
Nothing really. Just, you know, I'm really, really grateful for everybody following me on this ridiculous project that I've been doing. It has been incredibly exhausting, but it's also been a whole lot of fun. And I'm just grateful that all these years later, people still listen to my music, and I still get to do this. So thank you for checking it out. You know, subscribe to my YouTube, follow me on Spotify, sign up for my Patreon if you love me enough for that. That's all I got.
All the links will be underneath the video when it's all finished, to
Perfect.
make sure. You still passionate about what you do, Daniel?
Oh man, like,
Obvious, really.
like I said, you know, this is really like my life's work, and as difficult as it may be sometimes, it's like when I wake up in the morning, like, I'm stoked to get to do what it is that I do. It's like the fire is burning as hot as ever, maybe even hotter now than it was when I was a kid, because I just appreciate it so much more. Like, you know, when you're 19, you don't really understand the world, or you don't care about anything. It's like, but when you're almost 40, you're just like, oh wow, you start to kind of like appreciate the things that you have, and yeah, the fire's burning hot. I'm super grateful. I love it every day.
Brilliant. We'd love to see you back in Malta at some point, Daniel.
I'm sure we will be playing Dark Malta again as soon as it is safe.
Yeah, because that would be brilliant to see you again. Well, Daniel, Aesthetic Perfection, that has been absolutely brilliant. Pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
Fantastic, Daniel. Hope we can do it again sometime.
Anytime.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
American Psycho. American Psycho.